Hi there. I'm going to give a very brief introduction to using rubrics in your iLearn or Canvas assignment. Although I think rubrics are a fantastic tool overall and should be used in all assignments of consequence, the other reason I'm doing this is to lay the groundwork for setting up SLO recording in your course. Let me go ahead and show you a sample assignment as well as a sample rubric. This window over here has my iLearn course, and I have an art portfolio assignment set up. And then what we're looking at over here is a typical example of a rubric, as you probably understand it. The idea of rubrics in Canvas is pretty much exactly the same. You have some kind of table with a certain criteria that you will be evaluating the assignment by these criteria. So in this one, it's the performance of the portfolio, the craftsmanship is the second criteria, and their interpretation or analysis is the third criteria. And then for two or more different levels of expertise, let's say, there's a description of what that would look like. So in this one, the ratings go from 1 through 4 that kind of correspond to not meeting expectations to exceeding expectations. So for each of the three criteria, there's a little description of what not meeting expectation looks like, or approaching, or meeting the expectation, or exceeding them. Okay, so that's your kind of your standard rubric setup. And the point of all this is to show you how in Canvas, that basic structure is exactly the same. So you can include a rubric for an assignment, most likely, and you could also include one for a discussion post. And I think that's about it. There is a way to add them to a quiz, and I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense. So I'm going to demonstrate how I would add a rubric to this art portfolio assignment. I'm going to go off of this sample one, which is pretty good. Another point I should add here is that we're going to be doing a lot of clicking and doing things through the web interface to set up the rubric. You'll see that it's very helpful to kind of create it, to get these parts written, and it doesn't have to be all fancy in a table. You could just do it, with bullet points. But it's nice to have these written out before you start messing around with the whole web interface. I think that's just a simpler way to do it. So as you can see, I've set up the assignment. I've kind of given the students their prompt, what to include in your portfolio. And I do tell them to please see the rubric below for how I'll be grading it. And so in the student view of this assignment, they should see a button to view the rubric once I create it. So down here below the due date, there's this plus rubric button, which I'm going to go ahead and click to start creating my rubric. And like I said, the basic setup, the basic idea is going to be the same. What we're going to go over is just all the various places that you can modify and add to it. But we have a table here. We have criteria and their ratings. And then in Canvas, we can attach a certain number of points to each of the criteria. So in here, they're just all 1 through 4. You could you could attach more or fewer points to any of your criteria if you wanted to. You'll see that our view here in Canvas doesn't exactly match this rubric. In this rubric here, we have the criteria going down in columns. Just be aware of that. It's still showing the same thing. And there's a bunch of options that I would not get too deep into the weeds for those. I'll show you the ones that matter. So let's just give it a name for rubric. And let's start adding our criteria. So there's three levels of criteria here in my sample that I'm going by, and each one has four separate ratings. So we are given a sample one. It's just description of criterion and two different ratings. And as you can see, as I click on it, it's already popping up things for me to edit. So I'm going to call the first one portfolio performance, and I'll just take out my what this sample doesn't have is a general description of these. So I'm going to make those up right now. And I'll be a little brief because I'm just demonstrating uh, overall, um, overall appearance. It's probably a loaded word for an art portfolio, but that's and in a real assignment, I would expand on this probably quite a bit more. But so that's our first criteria here, going down the column, and then we're going to put in our descriptions for exceeding, meeting expectations, etc. So you'll note that we're given only two slots here for ratings, but that's okay. We can keep adding more. And that's a 3. Um, so while I have it open, I'm just going to put it in. It's not ideal that there's all these hard returns in here, but I'm going to fly past that. That looks okay. For this one, let's call this a 4-point. I'll click the pencil to edit it. We'll call that exceeding. And we'll copy in this. Looks good. Okay, and then we're still lacking one column, so I'll add that. That comes out to 2 points. That's approaching. And demonstrates an understanding, a developing quality, acceptable manner. Okay, so the idea is that you're making it very clear and very explicit to your students what you're evaluating them on. So this one, yeah, I have to click the pencil to edit. We'll change that to 1 point. Not meeting. Another comment is that in a real assignment, I wouldn't exactly write things this way. I would write these directed at the student. I would say, your assignment occasionally demonstrates an understanding of principles and elements used in art, but there's difficulty in demonstrating, et cetera, et cetera. This is a little academic speak for my liking, but I think that you understand the point here. Okay, so that covers our first criteria, and we have 4 total points for it. So we'll just continue that to add another row to this. I'll say plus criterion, singular of criteria. And I'm not going to duplicate. I'm going to say a new one, craftsmanship. And create it. Let's add in a 3. Okay, so there is 3 criteria with 4 levels each of evaluation. All right. Now, just as a little sneak preview, what we're going to do with student learning outcomes is that we're going to add probably just one more row here. And what we're going to add is the actual student outcome. And to do that, we'll click on Find Outcome. We'll expand our window a little bit. And this is kind of a funny course I'm in. In typical courses, there will just be listed the outcomes that apply to that course. Composition and design elements. So let's say we're going to add this one as our SLO. The one thing to be aware of here is this checkbox, use this criterion for scoring. So this is asking the SLO evaluation. It's 0 to 3 points. Do you want to include it in the grade of the assignment that you're doing? Most likely you will not, so you'll be sure to uncheck use this criterion for scoring. So that means the points you give to the SLO, those just go to SLOs, and the points you give to the assignment, those just go to assignments. That was an older SLO. They'll just show 3, 2, 1, or 0 points, and a 2 or higher is meeting the SLO. Okay, so this one, it will not be a part of the student's score, so I'm less worried about giving full and complete descriptions. Okay, and then, so going back to just rubrics by themselves, you have it all set up. Notice that we have our 4 points, 4 points, 4 points is a total of 12, and this SLO one is not being included. So this is both a way to communicate to the student what we as teachers are looking for. It's also a helper for you to do the grading once they turn in the work. So of your options down here, I'll write free-form comments when assessing students. I think that's probably going to be a good one to add. Wait, let's not do that, actually. We don't want to remove points. I mean, you could, but I don't want to. Learning Mastery Gradebook, don't worry about it. And then this is the only real important one. Use this rubric for assignment grading. This lets you use the rubric in the speed grader the way I was talking about. So that's probably going to be the only one that you want checked. Hide score total for assessment results, you probably don't want that. So with all of our rubrics set up the way that we want, and just the grading checkbox checked, we'll go ahead and create it. Change assignment points to match the rubric. I never did put in points for that assignment, so yeah, let's use the 12 points for the rubric. In your actual assignment, you will probably have some larger scheme of how much an assignment is worth, and you would have created these points accordingly. I didn't think about that before I created this, so I'm just going to leave the assignment at 12 points, which will be fine for my purposes. And now we're back here at the assignment overview page. So I've created my assignment, and I've given them a prompt, and then I've put in the rubric, and I did include this SLO one. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at what a student sees of this. Okay, I didn't put in a due date. It's worth 12 points. Here's the prompt like they would normally see. And for grading, I said, please see the rubric below for the specific elements we'll be looking at for your portfolio assignment. And here are the criteria. Like I said, it wasn't ideal that I have hard returns in here. Actually, that's just a small space. There we go. And yeah, so this is a fairly extensive rubric. Again, in a real class, I would write these a little bit more to the point, to so that a student could scan over them quickly. But this is what a student's going to be seeing, and um, they should have a way to actually turn in work. So let's change that real quick. Um, and we'll say online file uploads, and we'll restrict them to PDF and Word documents. Save that. Okay, one more time for the student view, just to remind you that they see all this, and when they're ready to turn it in, they see start assignment, which I think is poorly labeled, but they're going to be able to do a file upload. Okay, so that's how a student will submit an assignment. Let's get out of that, and without having anybody turned in work, let's real quickly look at what we see in the speed grader, because this is the other half of a rubric, is what you see when you're doing the grading. So we have our students here. Kyle Billups has not actually turned anything in, but as you come to do your grading, you see your typical points out of 12. So what you're going to do is ignore this place to just put in a score, and you're going to split your window a little bit better here and do view rubric, and you get all of this. So this is a nice shortcut for the teacher. You put in all this work up front to set up your rubric. And the payoff now is that you can come in and do your grading by clicking on the rubric. And of course, it's best to add comments. So you can add comments to any of these. So if you want to talk specifically about this aspect of the rubric, you can go ahead and do that. And keep moving along here. Let's say he met that. And so that, just by clicking on the right cell of the rubric, it's setting up our points. And when we get to the SLO, I'm going to do the same and click on one of them. Those points are not, the student will not be concerned with those points. That'll be part of the SLO reporting. So let's go ahead and save that. That'll probably trigger out an email to Kyle that he got graded. So great. And that's it. Obviously, as a teacher and as with a larger assignment, I would spend more time giving specific feedback, either down here for the assignment overall, or here inside of one of the aspects of the rubric. Okay, so that is the setting up of and the grading of rubrics for any iLearn assignment. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. And thank you again for watching.